Lee.
Thank you, Acting President. I rise to speak on the Cemeteries and Crematoria Amendment Bill 2021 and just like to echo the thoughts and sentiments from Ms Xing in relation to the lapel pins and ribbons and etc. And it's good to have something that's tangible and an actionable item that's before us that actually addresses the key issues at hand. And also Ms Crozier, who spoke about the documentary last night, which I watched myself, the Look What You Made Me Do documentary on SBS, and I urge anyone who hasn't seen it to have a look at it. It's on again next week, 3-part series, and it just shows you how remarkable and frightening at the same time family violence and also coercive control can be. And if you're not too sure what coercive control is, then just take a look at that documentary and you'll soon find out. I'd also like to pay my respects to Karen Williams' family and friends who have gone through the unimaginable grief. What happened to Karen should happen to no one, especially not by the ones that they love. This bill provides another opportunity to cast a light on family violence and its scourge in our society. Here we are, 5 years after the Royal Commission's recommendations were handed down, and we haven't put a dent in the awful family violence figures despite shoveling millions into initiatives. So something just isn't right. I'd also like to congratulate the work of the APP for the appeal on the lenient sentence of Boris Rostevsky. The APP, like the Victorian public, thought 9 years was not enough for the heinous crime of deception by Rostevsky. On appeal, even Justice Ferguson said Rostevsky had engaged in and I quote, elaborate course of deception, unquote, and that is an understatement. It's disappointing that there were plea deals done to downgrade Rostevsky's sentence from murder to manslaughter, and that this conviction will never reflect the calculated callousness of that man. The crocodile tears, the misinformation, the blatant lying to authorities, the deception to devastated family members, and the attempted destruction of Karen's character by her perpetrator. But at least he's away for longer than the original 9 years. This bill goes to the heart of an issue we don't often talk about with regard to family violence, and that is the aftercare death. The aftercare of victims and their loved ones in their death. And how dare Rostevsky decide the inscription on Karen's headstone as a devoted wife, and how dare he have that power? He should also have never had the opportunity to rest next to her. And I commend the retrospectivity of this bill to 2005, where those who have been convicted after this time will at least be behest of the new legislation. Whilst I query exactly how this date came to be, I think being retrospective is a very good thing. I'd like to point out that there has been a great delay in bringing this bill to the House, and whilst I'm not employed within the machinery of the Health Department, and I appreciate that they have been a little bit busy with COVID-related matters, a delay of almost 5 years from the VLRC recommendation is a long time for this debate to occur. But I'd like to acknowledge that we're always going to have problems with family members and granting final wishes for their loved ones. And this becomes more complex in broken families, situations where wills don't exist and where there is a criminal matter involved in the death of a person. But one thing remains inarguable, and that if you kill your partner or family member, you should have no rights or any say in their after-death care. Not to take away from the seriousness or sensitivity of this topic, but this bill does lend itself to a rare opportunity to discuss the current problem that we have in Victoria about the space for plots in public cemeteries. The research tells us that the Victorian government need to have a plan for cemeteries, including acquiring more land, or we will literally have nowhere to go once we depart this mortal coil. There are a number of proposals being put forward about the rights of interment, and these include the rights being handed down to cemetery trusts after 25 years unless objection and payment by rights of interment holders and veterans accepted. This is in contrast to the perpetuity of rights of interment that currently occurs for burials in Victoria. As this bill also confirms, you can opt for a 25-year limited tenure for cremation, and we should have the same for burials as well. I should note this happens all across Europe, where they don't have room to keep grave sites perpetually. When the 25 years is up and the family choose not to renew the site, the trust remove the headstone and reuse the land. Asia is leading the charge on this though. Hong Kong actually have hill slopes that they use for cemeteries to save space. Something that is popping up again though, and I think it would be more palatable for Victorians, is a vertical burial. In my electorate near Camperdown, upright burials have been operating since 2010. They're innovative eco-burial sites where you're laid to rest in an eco bag in the ground looking up at Mount Elephant. This option is also more affordable than a traditional burial with a casket, headstone and other expenses. We're seeing more cremations, but there are limitations to these, particularly for ethnic and religious beliefs. And whilst cremation can have a limited tenure for rites of interment, burials must be perpetual. And the problem is that cemetery trusts are required by legislation to hold enough equity to look after graves in perpetuity, so it's not in their interest to spend their money on new land. This is the government's job. We may see this as being a problem in the future, and this is something that we should be noted. The Government of Victoria should look at Adelaide, who are said to have the gold standard, according to Dr. Hannah Gould, for laws around renewable tenures. I'd encourage the government to act swiftly on this. But back to the most important part of the bill, and I'm not going to spend too much time on this one. It's a great one, and I commend the government for bringing it to the Parliament, even if it is a number of years after the fact. Karen's death should not be in vain. Family violence has never been more on the radar of lawmakers as it is now. Despite this, more work needs to be done. And I hope that this bill is just one very small portion of a much wider reform. Thank you.